we still have demand for oil and gas in this country right now. This is a contract that's been in place for some time. You don't just enter into these contracts and then rip them up, because all we're going to do is import it at a greater cost. And that's not particularly environmentally friendly either. I understand the emotion around this and why people just think the answer is to stop the drilling in that oil field. Yet we still need that oil at the moment. This Green SNP coalition will be anti-family because they are going to put up the prices of our energy here in Scotland, because the Greens want to stop oil and gas production in the North Sea in the next 10 years.
Douglas Ross, football referee, leader of the Scottish Conservatives. Are you a glutton for punishment?
Well, I don't know. My wife's also a police officer, so I always say we're probably the most unpopular couple to invite out. So I enjoy my jobs. I enjoy being an MP for this area, being an MSP leading the Scottish Conservatives, the main opposition here in Scotland to the SNP, and I also enjoy refereeing, so it's things I enjoy.
I'd like to talk about drug deaths in Scotland, if I may. Heroin, cocaine, benzos, they all exist down south in Northern Ireland and in Wales. So why are Scotland's drug deaths so out of step with the rest of the country?
This is a question that the Scottish Government really have to answer. Why have we continued to see year on year an increase in the number of people dying as a result of drug deaths in this drug overdose in this country? 1,339 in the last year that we have statistics for, up from 1,264 the year before, and up every year since. We cannot just say it's a problem that's experienced elsewhere in the UK, because we know our numbers are far higher, not just in the UK, but across Europe and the world as well. Now, there are issues in terms of the age profile, maybe more older men who have abused drugs for a long period of time, but we cannot simply go year after year and accept that we're going to have increasing drug deaths, because every single one of those is someone who's been taken too early and a family broken at the death of a loved one.
What's your view on drug consumption rooms? Peter Crykent's scheme in Glasgow's been met with some success, and they're looking at opening one there. Do you support it?
I don't support drug consumption rooms, because I think the best way to reduce our drug deaths is to stop people taking drugs. But I know the work that Peter has done, very admirable work, working with people who are affected in this way. I've seen the scenes in Glasgow of needles being left around. I know how communities really feel strongly about this. And I will continue to look at the evidence from around the world. I know Portugal is often cited and many other places. So I'm not a closed book on this. But what I'd like to see at the moment is we have no drug consumption rooms in England or Wales, yet the drug deaths are far lower. So it's not just about the powers that are reserved to the UK Parliament or that we don't have here in Scotland. We've got a lot of powers that we can deal with this at the moment, yet year on year, we're seeing more and more people dying of drugs in Scotland than in other parts of the United Kingdom.
You're assuming that the SNP, Angela Constance, Nicola Sturgeon would point the finger saying they need more devolved powers to be able to deal with this?
Well, they have. At every single debate, indeed we had one when Parliament got recalled earlier this summer. I think it was really bad that Nicola Sturgeon didn't lead that herself, because this is a national emergency. We need a combined effort to deal with this. Her minister spoke to Parliament about it and basically said, well, if we could get more powers for Westminster, this would all be far better. But we know, with the same powers elsewhere in the United Kingdom, the problem is not as acute as it is here in Scotland.
To what extent can the roots of this problem be traced back to the deindustrialisation of places like Glasgow in the 1980s under Margaret Thatcher?
I mean, if we look at some of the places that we gained councillors, for example, in 2017, Ravenscraig is now represented by a Conservative, a very good Conservative councillor. So I think, yes, there is history there, and people are very strongly associated with their ties to the past, but they also see Margaret Thatcher came to power before I was even born. And many of the problems we're experiencing here in Scotland right now are problems that could have been solved over the last 14 years by an SNP government. But instead of focusing on the issues here in Scotland and trying to improve things, they'd rather just pick fights with Westminster the whole time.
Why are you both an MP and an MSP?
Because I was elected to Moray in 2017 as the MP and re-elected in 2019 to serve the people of Moray. And I want to serve out my time in the UK Parliament for the people of Moray. That's what I said I would do. It's been done before. MSPs from the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives have been in both parliaments. And actually I think it's quite a good thing that someone can be Scotland's voice both at Holyrood and at Westminster, because we have two parliaments, we have two governments, and I think it's important that we can at times see our governments working together, and what better way to do that than have someone in both parliaments.
When you were asked what you would do if you were Prime Minister in an interview, you responded by saying you'd like to see tougher legal enforcement against the gypsy traveller community. In a recent response to the SNP Green coalition in Scottish Government, you referred to the deal as anti-families, which some have said is a homophobic dog whistle. These remarks are indicative of a bigoted politics, are they not?
So, no, they're not. Let's take them in turn. The comment I made about if I was Prime Minister for a day was a quick-fire interview where I was asked what I would say to Jeremy Corbyn if we were stuck in a lift together, and many other quick-fire questions. And when I was asked at that moment what I would do if I was Prime Minister for the day, I was actually dealing with a local case here of an illegal, unauthorised gypsy traveller encampment. And it is an issue that we face here in Murray and in parts of the United Kingdom, particularly in the summertime. And it's a big issue between the settled community and the traveller community. But if I had my time again, would I give the same answer? Absolutely not. I learned from my mistakes, I hold my hands up, I say I was wrong, and I hopefully don't make those mistakes again. The second point was a tweet where I said this Green SNP coalition will be anti-family because they are going to put up the prices of our energy here in Scotland because the Greens want to stop oil and gas production in the North Sea in the next 10 years. At the same time, they know that demand for oil and gas remains the same, so we will have to import from outside the UK at higher prices, and that's why I think this coalition is anti-families. But that's anti-families, whatever the makeup, it is nothing to do with LGBT.
You would strongly disassociate yourself with the suggestion that those remarks are a homophobic dog whistle?
Absolutely. The context that I was putting that tweet in was about how they are going to punish hard-working families, however those families are made up here in Scotland, because of their policies on energy.
What does success look like for the Scottish Conservatives under Douglas Ross?
Well, many people thought we would slip back into third place. We're still the main opposition party. We increased our votes at the last election. We held on to 31 seats. We stopped an SNP majority, which they said would lead to a second independence referendum. And at the same time, the other pro-UK parties, the Liberal Democrats, have got so few MSPs now, they're not even recognised as a formal party in Holyrood. And the Scottish Labour Party have lost votes and seats at every election since devolution in 1999. So success for the Scottish Conservatives is continuing to challenge this SNP government, who I think have let down the people of Scotland over the last 14 years, and also show people over the course of this Parliament that we can be a government in waiting.
Is it realistic, do you think, that the Scottish Conservatives could lead the government, the Scottish Government?
Well, I believe so, because if people had said that the SNP would never get into power in 1999 or after the 2003 election, we've actually got more MSPs now than the SNP had in 2003 before they came to power in 2007. So absolutely everything is possible. And again, it's showing people that it doesn't have to be the same as we've had for the last 14 years. There is an alternative out there, and clearly only the Scottish Conservatives can provide that alternative.
If the UK government wants to achieve net zero emissions by 2050, how does drilling a new oil field at Cambo help to achieve that goal?
Because we still have demand for oil and gas in this country right now. This is a contract that's been in place for some time. You don't just enter into these contracts and then rip them up. You've got to look at a just transition from oil and gas, and that's exactly what the UK government have done with the first deal between the industry and the government anywhere in the G7. Millions and billions of pounds put in by the government and the industry to have that just transition, to ensure that the skills we have in oil and gas can be transferred into renewables. But while our demand is still the same, you can't just cut off supply and assume that solves the problem, because all we're going to do is import it at a greater cost, and that's not particularly environmentally friendly either.
So it's burn more fossil fuels to achieve net zero?
Well, I think we've all got to look at how we can change our lifestyles to reduce our dependency on fossil fuels, and there's a lot of good work being done. This transition within the oil and gas industry I think is really exciting, that the industry itself recognises the problems it has in terms of its image and its emissions, and they want to work with their sector and governments to make them far cleaner. And I think that's really positive, and I'd like to see more engagement in that, rather than just always criticising the oil and gas industry, which provides 100,000 jobs here in Scotland, is hugely important for our economy in the northeast of Scotland and right across the country, but it is an industry that we can work with to ensure that we have a very vibrant renewable industry using the skill set of the people currently in oil and gas.
Why on earth would any of the other nations attending the climate summit COP26 in Glasgow in November pay any attention to what the UK has to say in terms of decarbonising their economies and achieving net zero emissions, if at the same time we're drilling an oil field whose emissions are comparable to 16 coal-fired power plants.
Just look at what the UK are doing in terms of renewables, in terms of getting more energy efficient homes and businesses, in terms of charging points, in terms of improving our transport network. All of these things are combined to help us reduce our output to get us to net zero by 2045. These are really positive things. But again, I go back to the oil field. We can't simply say, right, we're not going to drill there, but then expect the public to still use the same amount of energy resources that they need, because we'll have to get that from somewhere. So I understand the emotion around this and why people just think the answer is to stop the drilling in that oil field, yet we still need that oil at the moment.
Douglas Ross, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.